Okay, so I'm sorry to have missed today. I really want to know about each of you because it seems like you guys are all industry experts in your various realms. So I'm sorry that I missed that today. My name is Linnea Jackson. I'm a member of the Hoopa Valley Tribe, and I am my tribe's I'm general manager of the public utilities. So we probably can go to the next slide. So for those of you that don't know where Hoopa's at, like Sean said, we're about an hour and 15, an hour and a half inland, which has a very different scenario than the coast. Sometimes there can be a 30-degree difference when it's cold and foggy on the coast. People come inland where it can be over 100 degrees, and that causes different disparities. But nonetheless, it is. The Hoopa Valley Reservation is the largest land base in the state of California. There are over 109 federally recognized tribes, along with another handful that are only state recognized, but still the same status. So very proud to be from the Hoopa Valley. You can see we are mountainous, we're forested. That causes issues with wildfires and weather events and being isolated, which is a beautiful thing and can cause issues as well. So we can go to the next slide. So a little bit, we're in Humboldt County, a little bit of the North Coast history there. I didn't know if some of you were from here, but it seems like a lot of you are from out of the area. So I kind of just wanted to give that for a little reference. You can go to the next one. So when we talk about energy resiliency, some of the things that I talked about, being in the mountains, being in the forest, we are in a high fire threat area. So we are on a tier 2, tier 3 fire threat district, which causes energy resiliency issues. It causes breaks in communication and general services. And it also causes air quality issues. So there's an array of things like that. Half of that comes with just the nature, because as we know, fire isn't always a bad thing. There are traditional uses of it for the forest health that can be managed. But when we're thinking about climate change and some of those areas that are impactful, that can be not such a great thing. So we'll go ahead. So the Hoopa Valley Public Utilities District, we're a chartered entity of the tribe. The Hoopa Valley Tribe has 60 departments, anywhere from medical to fire to the store, the mini mart, social services. And within Hoopa Public Utilities, we started off as managing domestic water, which we took over from the Bureau of Indian Affairs. And so since 1982, we've been an established chartered entity. We have the largest tribal water utility in the state of California. We manage 2 water treatment plants, 20 water storage tanks, 12 pumping stations, and hundreds of miles of water lines. So a lot of that's electricity, it's pumping cost, it's the resiliency that we need to provide critical services. We do operate the largest tribal water utility in the state of California. We also manage our solid waste management. We are facilitating broadband on behalf of that. And next, we have an energy component. So there's a lot of hats that are under our realm and jurisdiction that are critical facilities. So in the last 5 years, I was appointed as general manager. We received a $65 million grant from NTIA to build a data center, communication towers, fiber optic infrastructure. A project that I'll talk about is called Terrace, and that's Tribal Energy Resilience and Sovereignty. We were just funded under that as a partnership grant under the Department of Energy. So that is about $87 million, but we have to come up with the $87 million in match. So I'll be passing a hat around. Feel free. Feel free. We can go to the next slide. So what are we showing here? So I didn't quite know the direction of this presentation, and so I was like, what am I going to learn? So from the earlier presentations, when I came, I enjoyed hearing about the activists, the advocates, and the leaders that are already sitting in this room. So that already kind of made me feel at ease. We talked about energy justice and some of the sustainability plans that I'm like, wow, we need to have those foundational documents written in so we can lean towards those. So a lot of inspiration in the presentations that I heard. So thank you for that. But when I was developing my presentation, I want to go back to energy resiliency, and PG&E has to do a sustainability report as a requirement for the CPUC. So this was issued about a month ago. So in PG&E's territory, the average customer experiences 256 outage minutes per year. So that's their whole territory, Bay Area and up. So we'll go to the next slide. So there were a couple of metrics tables. The first one was number of outages. So you see the Hoopa 1101 circuit, and we're listed down here like 20th percentile. And you go to the next one, and that's outage minutes. So we went back to the first metric of 256 outage minutes per customer per year. We go to Hoopa, and that's 2,447. So we're not even the top, we were number 6. So another area in Humboldt experiences 14 times more outage minutes than the average customer in this whole state's territory with PG&E. So Hoopa being 9 times more outage minutes, that's your lack of heating your refrigerator and your freezer. So in rural areas, we rely on sustainability. We rely on, food preservation, medical devices, heating and cooling, communications, utilities. And so that factor is, to me, very telling. And so I hadn't seen that data until last night at 6:30, and it kind of sat there and blew my mind. I was like, what? And I was like kind of outraged there in my own office by myself. But so there's no one to share that with me until now. But thank you very much. So with that, it seems like there would be direction from the state's utility to then invest. And the title of that section was, what was it? Go to the next one, I'm so sorry. Okay, I missed that. So the title of that section was the top 1% of the worst performing circuits. And that's very telling. And it seems like to me that the funding would then be directed towards those top circuits, right? It would make sense to me that you funnel funding to address the larger issues. So then I want to go back to the DOE grant that we just received. So not only are we simultaneously having to, and just like the young lady that was up here, disadvantaged and meeting all those metrics of sustainability, fire threat, constant outages, not a lot of, high income in that area. That doesn't mean we don't have wealth of other types, but when we talk about salary levels, it's just a lack of economic development and opportunities there. But with that, how are we supposed to meet all the metrics and meet the Medicare baseline and all of those things, yet simultaneously raise this behemoth amount of money to upgrade energy resiliency? We're in that top 1%. It doesn't make sense. So part of me, and I always say this, is that I want to like Aaron Brockovich that whole thing. And I always say that because I'll be like that lady that's like, so we have to effect change at the policy and regulatory level, which is part of the reason why I speak my mind and when I have opportunities to be in space with state and federal leadership to kind of voice those things, because it cannot happen without policy or regulation changes. And they need to hear these kind of factors that are against us. So this is the Hoopa substation. The Hoopa substation is owned by PG&E, and it serves multiple upriver and downriver communities. So it's the Hoopa tribe, it's the Yurok tribe, and the Karuk tribe. And so when the substation is out for whatever reason, it's all of those downriver communities, and it's a large swath of area. So simultaneously, the Terrace project is going to build nested microgrids. So each community can have their own microgrid solar battery backup, be able to island, and also provide energy back to the grid and support one another. So that's what we're talking about. But again, it's just one funding source. And so we can probably go to the next slide. So this is the Terrace project. I can't quite see it, but it's the Blue Lake Rancheria. It's Hoopa, Yurok, Karuk. And the actually applicant is Redwood Coast Energy Authority. So having our CCA step up and kind of want to be a partner in this is amazing. For those of you that don't know, Schatz Energy Research Center is out of Cal Poly Humboldt. They have been extraordinary partner with us. I count on them daily, and they are such like down to earth, brilliant, kind people, and that goes a long way. And so they're willing to invest their time. They're willing to create projects that don't quite exist yet. What does that look like pairing 4 sovereign tribal governments? What does that look like bridging the CCA? And how can we make that all work together? So that is our lofty goal, and we have 5 years to implement. So we have a long journey ahead of us. I was telling Dave that I feel like I'm at the tip of the iceberg on what we can do with energy resiliency, but it has a far-reaching effect on pretty much everything that we do. Daily lives, communications, emergency services. So that is the Terrace project, and the award was issued probably within the last 2 weeks. So this is very new. We're facilitating renegotiation of what those contract terms look like, trying to meet the match. So 87 million seems like a lot of money, but we still have to come up with the other half of that. You know, how do we just all of a sudden, you know, propagate 87 million? Well, it's going to take a lot of things, which I'll talk about next. So we also have a opportunity with the California Energy Commission. It's for long duration energy storage. This is something that is new. It's new technology. It's a different type of battery. It's not lithium ion. So simultaneously, we're having our technicians look at what that technology looks like, because the batteries operate differently. But then how do you pass up the opportunity to receive funding to help support that, because the match also has to be non-federal funds. Well, tribes, the government to government relationship. So the 65 million I talked about for broadband, because they need fiber optics for data transmission, communication of those systems, those energy micromanagement systems, needs the fiber optics, but we can't use that funding as match. So again, policy regulation, that again needs an overhaul. So this is the site. This is our water treatment plant, which is under Hoopa Utility. That is the highest demand energy location within the valley. It produces over almost 2 million gallons a month. So we're, you know, pumping out constantly on edge. So the water treatment plant, volunteer fire, and our wildland fire. That's not a great view, but I wanted to see the river, so. So you're thinking about that, and those people that work in environmental, you're pairing something that's a newer technology right next to your river that has been a part of our tribe for thousands of years. We rely on it for sustainability. We rely on it for drinking water. So we need to pair these projects and be really mindful of how we're developing this from an environmental standpoint. So that's something that we also have to consider. But this will be probably another 2 to 4 year grant. Year 1 is planning, environmental, tech design, sizing, and then next comes construction funding. So tribal energy resiliency, I did talk about this. I can't quite see it, but we're going to have construction services, job creation. We're looking at wholesale distribution, and with that comes the legal arm. So I don't know if there's any attorneys in the office, but you need specialized energy assistance and legal assistance, those interconnection agreements. You know, what are you signing into? What are you like obligating the tribe to do and be responsible for? So we need a lot of legal assistance as well, which does not come cheap. So next slide. So with the Terrace project alone, we are supposed to generate 4 megawatts of PV, 7.8 megawatts of battery energy storage system. We're looking at small hydro. So with the hydro, I have a love-hate relationship, because we know about the damming of the rivers, no fish ladders, the environmental atrocities that have happened. I'm the chair of the Indian Land Tenure Foundation, and we recently traveled up to the Colville Reservation. And if you've ever been up to Washington, you see the Grand Coulee Dam, you see the Chief Joseph Dam. So I'm simultaneously in awe of the infrastructure, but there's no fish ladder. So when you talk to the local tribes that are kind of fighting those issues, I had a chance to release salmon above Grand Coulee Dam for the first time ever. And Brian Newland, who's the assistant deputy director under Deb Holland, was there, BIA, some of their senators. So just to be a part of that was absolutely amazing, to release fish in a river where they're normally from anyway. So that was like such an honor, and I was just like, wow, that was amazing. So that was about 2 weeks ago. But I'm looking at energy infrastructure, so I'm looking at, like, do we have to dam our creeks? What's that impact going to be? But with this funding, they want us to have a minimum amount of backup resiliency. So regardless, we have to produce enough energy and storage to be eligible for the funding. And that's under PG&E CMIT program, which is Community Microgrid Incentive Program. So we have to meet energy resilience goals, be at the top level of our technician, find the funding, implement, manage it, all while being, in awe of our cultural resource protection and environmental protection, all at once. So it's a heavy lift there. So we can go next. So I put this picture up there because we talked about the DOE grant, but we also need the stars to align. So I need PG&E CMIP program to fund our application. We also need the Energy Commission long duration energy storage. We need philanthropy to step up. We have to consider a long-term loan. But if anyone knows that's working on projects, there's tax incentives that we have to consider. What does that look like? Is the infrastructure going to offset the cost of the overhead? So there's that financial portfolio. So not only are you looking at environmental tech design, finding the financing and the legal, which is anyone working on projects, you have to have all of those components. And the last one I threw in there because we still don't quite know how we are going to come up with this money. I do believe it'll happen. I believe in what we're doing, but that's why I put we're going to have bake sales and car washes to make that happen, because we have to be like the grassroots. There's no one doing this. And when I talked about being living on one of the worst producing circuits and then trying to raise this money, it's a large feat, but I do believe we're going to achieve it. We have to be able to achieve that. So that's where I kind of joked on the portfolio. I don't know if there's another slide. Okay, so we talked about the broadband infrastructure, because without that, we are building 80 miles of fiber to the home. We also have the first joint build with the California Department of Technology, and we are building 23 miles with the state of California as part of their middle mile broadband infrastructure. So that goes hand in hand with the energy projects. And as natives, we always have drums, so I planned that. I'm joking. Okay, we got next. You're like, you can go to the next slide. I mean, yeah. It's working. So again, I didn't quite know what to present. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer, but that's a little bit of what we're working on and trying to achieve.
I just want to say, these are more comments. Thank you for your presentation. And you're not working on a little bit of nothing. That was a lot.
Yeah.
That was a lot.
Thanks. Thank you. Yes.
Can you explain again, I may have missed what you said on this, but the reason for doing the hydroelectric project or the damming, why is it that you're kind of being asked to or told to or whatever to do that? Because it's a tiny bit of power, and it's like, just throw in some more solar panels and be done with it.
It's true. Is there a way to jump back to the second slide? The one that shows the valley view, sorry. So with that, most of the area that's developed and close to the grid is within that valley floor. So a lot of that is taken up by tribal assignments, our tribal government facilities. So there's really lack of space to, not everyone's going to want all the open spaces just to have solar fields. So it's not something that our tribe or our culture really wants. And so building up in the benchlands, because the valley floor might be about 3,000 acres, the rest of the other 97,000 is mountainous like this. So it's very hard, it's expensive to build to, it needs to be, southern facing, and also to bring it back down to the grid is so expensive, to bring in power poles or to underground those lines to be able to back up the resiliency. So it's really a topography issue and a finance issue, if you will. And nobody wants solar fields everywhere. I'm already probably taking up 10 acres, which is a lot on the valley floor. And nobody, there's complaints about that anyway. So it's really a space configuration.
And there's not enough developed land to put the solar on, or
Rooftop.
Yeah.
yeah, rooftop, pavement, whatever is developed already, and
So we talked about that.
agrivoltaics.
Right. So we haven't done the design yet. Like, we're 2 weeks into funding. Right now we have projections of what we can do. It might be a consideration. But if you're looking at older buildings, the roof might not be able to manage and support that system anyway. I was talking to Dave about how, yes, we want rooftop solar, but I know my house probably couldn't support it. I live in an older trailer, and there might need to be retrofitting and refiguring that needs to happen. So it's a possibility. Yes. Sorry.
So I find it sort of outrageous that, I forget which level of government, is asking you to match this huge amount. And is there any way that that is an attackable requirement? That there could be a political effort to waive that requirement or reduce it, that you folks would have to match that huge amount?
So we are doing that. We are talking to congressional offices and Senate offices and speaking with DOE, but that saying, like, it takes an act of Congress is kind of a true statement. Not that we're not going to push it that far. So we're working on match consideration. Yes.
One, let me know where I can sign a letter of support. I think all of us in this room would do that. Oh God, what was my other question? See, look, now I got so jazzed about that. Is there any push at this time to push PG&E to be responsible for part of that match, considering that you all are in the top 1% of the worst, those statistics, I wrote them all down. I mean, it's horrendous. Over 2,000 outages a year. You would think that they would have some level of responsibility that you guys could try to leverage.
Mm-hmm.
Utilities are making them.
So they've had 50 years to step up and invest, and they haven't done it.
Yeah.
So are we pushing them? Of course. But again, it needs to come from the regulatory body, which is the CPUC. So we are working in coordination with them. Yes.
I guess to piggyback on that, I mean, I quickly did the math. It's like a week's worth of time, working week worth of time per person of power lost. And so, like, I feel like you need a good lawyer to equate that to, like, business operations and finances lost.
Right.
It's all to PG&E.
Right. Right.
Oh.
And to put it in perspective, when that happens, it's either really hot or really cold. And so we're hooking up generators, we're daisy chaining extension cords throughout the house, just to kind of survive. So that's some of the things that we're faced with, but we are working on active solutions to address that. Okay.
I also was just wondering, how do you guys make land use considerations? Like, you talked about the long duration storage being next to the river and the limited space that you have. Like, what are some of the considerations that you're thinking about when it comes to making a really difficult decision of like, do we put this infrastructure here that's going to be here long term?
Right. So all land, all of the assets within the reservation have to be approved through the Hoopa Valley Tribal Council. So they're elected officials, we have a chairman, and we have a seven governing body, if you will. So they will make that official motion with considerations on highest and best use, what's the benefit versus the taking and usage of land. So it's a council decision. Yes.
You mentioned that you felt uncomfortable with this type of communication space, I guess, or something like this. And then I just think a lot about, you know, like what are the spaces we need and gatherings we need to do this?
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything, or like you mentioned you really enjoyed working with some of the student teams. What are the relationships and ways to come together that would be helpful from your perspective, I guess?
So mostly I kind of meant like standing by the side of the screen and looking that way. But that's kind of a joke. But with that, it has to be community meetings. It has to be engagement from multi-level. Because I think you gain the most by hearing perspectives of other stakeholders and people in the space that might bring up an idea. Because like I said, it's not just the tribes, it's the engineers, it's the legal staff. We need that whole governing perspective to find the solution to the whole. And so we have to be in space and people that we might not necessarily have the same government status or the same job. But we've, Humboldt Area Foundation is a nonprofit in the area. They've kind of convened, and we didn't even get to talk about offshore wind, but that could be part of my future presentations. But I think what I've gained out of having local elected leadership, tribes, academics, all in one space, I think is more beneficial because it comes with a wider perspective and view. Thank you. Hey.